VR for consoles is almost here, courtesy of Sony's PlayStation VR, RIP cooler codename Project Morpheus, which hits shelves October 13th. If you're trying to figure out what it is and how it stacks up to its PC competitors, and if it's worth the investment for you, here's everything you need to know. If you've already got a PS4, well, you're pretty much set. PlayStation VR works with all the current PS4 models, including the original console and the newer Slim replacement. It will also work with PlayStation 4 Pro, which will be out next month, but you don't need to spring for the beefier console in order to get it to work. Of course, if you do invest in the Pro, you'll see benefits like higher frame rates that make the VR experience even better, but PlayStation VR was built and tested with the current hardware in mind. The headset itself features a 5.7-inch OLED display with a 1920 by 1080 resolution, which breaks down to 960 by 1080 per eye. That's a little bit lower than both Oculus Rift and HTC Vive, which both sport a 2160 by 1200 resolution or 1080 by 1200 per eye, so it's about 80% of the resolution of those headsets. However, it does make up for that to some degree by using RGB subpixels for a smoother appearance and with a higher refresh rate. While both the Rift and the Vive target a 90Hz refresh rate, PlayStation VR ranges from 90Hz up to 120Hz depending on the game, but it's mostly targeting 120. At the moment, most games are targeting a frame rate of 90 as well, though the target for those will rise to 120 as developers get more familiar with the hardware. The latency is also pretty impressive at 18 milliseconds, an improvement significantly over Vive's 22 milliseconds. PlayStation VR also falls behind just slightly in the field of view department with around 100 degrees compared to the competition's 110 degrees, but that's still higher than most console games typically have, so not too bad. It's also the heaviest of the options at 1.3 pounds or 610 grams. In comparison, HTC Vive is a tad lighter at 1.2 pounds, and Oculus Rift is the lightest of the three at 1 pound even. However, the weight in PlayStation VR is more evenly distributed around the head, with early reports giving it the highest marks of the three in terms of comfort for long playing sessions. It's also worth noting that the headset makes accommodations for those who wear glasses, which is a common complaint for the other headsets. PlayStation VR also has a few nifty extra features thanks to the processing unit. It's about the size of a Wii console and comes with the VR unit for HDMI cable management, 3D audio processing, etc. One thing the processing unit enables is a social experience. Sort of. You can output the headset's feed to a TV so the people around you have some idea what you're flailing at like a crazy person. Context is key. You may keep the flailing to a minimum though. Unlike HTC Vive and even Rift to some degree once its touch controllers come to market, PlayStation VR is mostly designed as a sit-down VR experience. It does have a trackable play area of 6.2 by 9.8 feet or 1.9 by 3 meters, which is not that far off Oculus Rift's 5 by 11 feet or 1.5 by 3.3 meters. But neither of those comes anywhere close to HTC Vive's 15 by 15 feet or 4.5 meters square. Early reviews also note that the motion tracking can be, well, a little bit spotty at certain angles, so there's a definite sweet spot to PlayStation VR's trackable area, and it may be frustrating to venture outside it very much. PlayStation VR does require the additional investment of a PlayStation camera. If you've got an older model, that will do just fine, but they've relaunched a slightly newer model to go with their new VR system. Similarly, while the DualShock 4 controller that comes with your PS4 may be enough for some games, others require the Move motion control wands. Again, if you already have those from PS3, you're in good shape. If not, it may be an additional expense depending on the games you want to play. Really, you should probably count on needing them. Which brings us to costs. Out of the three major headsets, PlayStation VR is the most affordable by far, with a base price of $399 compared to Oculus Rift at $599 and HTC Vive at $799 US. However, that's just the base VR unit. They do offer a bundle that includes a PlayStation camera and two Move controllers for $499 instead, with a bonus packing game in the form of PlayStation Worlds VR, which is a collection of 5 VR experiences and tech demos. Think of it kind of as PlayStation VR's version of Wii Sports or Nintendo Land. That may seem like it brings the price awfully close to the cost of Oculus Rift, but Rift just announced their own motion controllers will cost $200 extra, so PlayStation VR is still significantly less expensive once you take that into account. But what do you actually play on it? Well, a lot, actually. PlayStation has dedicated an entire studio to developing VR and used its significant gaming partnerships to secure a launch day lineup of more than 30 games, including some heavy-hitting exclusives like Batman Arkham VR. Batman Arkham VR is a puzzle adventure game from Rocksteady that puts you in the Batsuit to unravel a mysterious threat to your allies and is considered one of the standout launch titles for the platform. Another critical darling is Battlezone VR, a tank-based VR reboot of the Atari classic Battlezone. It touts a procedurally generated campaign map, with the idea being that it's endlessly replayable, either single player or with up to 3 others. If you're looking for a solid seated experience, Thumper is a space-themed luge-style title that asks you to guide a beetle through a psychedelic hyperspace track in time to the accompanying soundtrack. Other highlights include Super Hypercube, a kind of Tetris-y keyhole puzzler, Until Dawn: Rush of Blood, a shooting game set in a haunted theme park that throws ghosts and killer clowns at you because we're not dealing with those enough these days, Wayward Sky, a gorgeous adventure puzzler that's more about the VR experience than anything, and a few dozen more. Another 25 plus games are due out for PlayStation VR before the end of the year, with more to come early next year, including Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which is expected to be a benchmark major VR experience. Reviews are hitting for the headset now, with mostly favorable opinions. We've done a full breakdown of all the major PSVR reviews in our Is It Good series, if you want to check that out. And we discussed the headset more in depth with other folks at Rooster Teeth to see who all is planning to pick it up and what the general consensus is. For more primers on upcoming releases and everything PlayStation VR has to offer, like this video and subscribe to The Know.
So what do you think it's going to take for it to catch on?
I think the price point's helping it a lot. And the install base of the PS4. I mean, a lot of people have computers, but not a lot of people have like that level of computer. So, I mean, again, I keep doing the comparison game. That's just us being in games, like we have all the toys
right.
for the most part. But me personally, I only have the one console. And I think it's that install base is really, really going to help it out.
Yeah, having like a potential audience of 40 million is good. I know the minimum video card specs, at least for both of the PCs, are the 970, right? Which I know a lot of people have.
It will run, a lot of stuff will actually run fine with less than that. And there's entire subreddit chains dedicated to just making the message that pops up in Oculus Home go away.
Really?
Because if you have less than the minimum required or recommended, it pops up a message at the top of Oculus Home, not in the view, but just on your desktop view. That's like, hey, you're not up to spec. And that just stays there.
You cheap ass.
You can close it, but you can every time it just pops back up.